Hi guys, I'm Adam Wilborn from WhatCulture.
And I'm Andy Murray from WhatCulture, and today, unfortunately, we have a truckload of news relating to the ongoing global health crisis, particularly Renee Young, Kevin Owens, and the 24 WWE employees that have apparently tested positive, not making that number up. We've also got the AEW Fyter Fest lineups, which are now finalised, and also notice of the closure of a popular indie promotion following abuse allegations.
Plus, WWE are bringing back a classic pay-per-view to go head-to-head with AEW's Fyter Fest on Wednesday night, and a former NXT star was spotted in the crowd at AEW Dynamite last night. This is the news.
Let's talk about Renee Young to kick things off. She has announced that she has tested positive for the ongoing global bastard, as we have christened it. She tweeted the following last night. Man, what a few days. My show gets cancelled and I get the thing. Wear your masks and wash your hands. Stay safe, everyone. Heart emoji. Now, there are ramifications to this beyond WWE. Of course, Renee Young's husband is Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley is the AEW World Champion. Jon Moxley has a match with Brian Cage on Fyter Fest, which is supposed to be being taped next week to go out the following week. We'll talk about Fyter Fest in a little bit, but there's lots of stuff here. Moxley had to pull out of last night's Dynamite. Tony Khan revealed the news that he'd come into contact with someone who'd come into contact with someone who had tested positive, so he'd made the decision himself to stay at home and get tested and rest up and avoid the risk of potentially spreading something to the rest of the AEW roster. Hats off to him for taking that step and not, risking everyone else. Hats off for Tony Khan as well, because, when he tweeted this out, it was before Renee announced it. He didn't out her. He just said, someone. So he protected her identity there before she came forward. Look, there's all kinds of potential ramifications here. There's all kinds of things that we could sit here and speculate on with regards to Fyter Fest and who Renee's been in contact with. She did an in-ring segment with AJ Styles last week on SmackDown, which was taped in advance, of course. So, man, this thing could really snowball. At the moment, I think the best thing to do is just wish a speedy recovery to Renee Young, and potentially, if he has it as well, Moxley too.
Yes, and we'll use this to seg into my half of this story, because worrying signs for the whole wrestling community coming out of WWE. We had Pro Wrestling Sheet's report recently that several people in the promotion had been popped at the Performance Center, and then we found out more recently, according to PW Insider, approximately 24 WWE employees tested positive for the thing we can't say because we'd get demonetized, following the company's first full round of checks last week. 24, that's spread across wrestlers, backstage staff, and other personnel who were at the WWE Performance Center last week. WWE issued the following statement on the matter. WWE will continue, testing of its talent, production crew and employees in advance of TV productions for the foreseeable future. I think the thing with this, Andy, is where were the signs? Where were the warnings? We couldn't possibly have seen this coming.
Yeah, this is, It's really frustrating, because we learned that we had the positive test the other week, the one positive test, which was the second the company's had so far, and that led to the tapings being shut down, and that led to things being delayed, and them running their first set of proper tests across the whole. They ran one set of proper tests, and it came off the back of another positive test across the whole roster, which is ridiculous. 3 months into this damn thing, their measures in handling this have been prehistoric. I mean, there's no good way for wrestling companies to continue operating at the moment, right? AEW have loads of people in their crowd. The fact that we have wrestlers in the ring interacting in the first place negates all social distancing guidelines and stuff anyway. It's just... But there are measures you can take, and there are things you can do to mitigate the risk even somewhat. And WWE, until recently, just haven't been doing them. And it sucks that so many people have caught this thing. It really does, because it's a potentially dangerous virus. And I hope that everyone who has contracted it comes out on the other side fine, But, man, geez. I'm kind of at a loss with this thing, because you kind of saw it coming, which is the worrying thing. And it's bad.
Yeah, it's something I go through on a daily basis in terms of working out what we're going to sort of produce content-wise, because, myself and you on the news, and then myself and the Dadley Boys, for example, on the podcast. You don't want to be the Debbie Downer who's always saying, oh, well, we have to caveat this with obviously the ongoing global bastard, etc., etc. But you cannot escape it. It's been just story after story of like a questionable development that allows wrestlers to be essential workers in Florida, and then you say, okay, well, at least there's some things being put into effect here, and then you find out that they're barely doing temperature checks, and they're saying to people, don't wear masks in the crowd, or if you're going to wear a mask, you may as well stay at home. And then the fact that you see, and this isn't just isolated to WWE, as much as AEW are doing tests, they're only certainly effective to a certain extent, having people brawl into the crowd, or mass brawls. You know, last night on Dynamite, for example, we saw tens of people in the ring all at the same time. It's, you know, you compare that, and I'm not saying that New Japan are doing the right thing by putting on shows whatsoever, but you look at what they are doing it to the ultimate extent, and yet WWE are doing the most basic, the bare minimum of what they have to do. This was always going to come through, especially when we were reading reports from like Brian Alvarez, for example, about just general Floridian, easy for me to say, residents, and, you know, people at the airport, and just tests popping off left, right, centre. Like, in that environment, it was always going to happen. Andy, you and I were talking just yesterday about how it's amazing that wrestling hasn't stopped, considering the months that we've had, and yet now it looks like this is finally coming back to bite them on the arse.
Yeah, it is. I think like we should point out, right, that the real problem here is the classification of wrestling and other sports as essential services, right? Because once that distinction was made, it kind of tied the promotion's hands a little bit, because you have networks here who expect a certain amount of live content per contracts every single time. And, you know, if that decision is made on your behalf by the state, if the state doesn't say you can't do this, the network is going to hold you to that deal. Now, we don't know the specific ins and outs of this, but it's reasonable to believe that if AEW or WWE just made the decision to not run original content and do reruns or whatever, then they may lose some revenue, they may lose even their TV contract. And losing a TV contract would be disastrous for AEW in particular, because they don't have the massive build-up of wealth that WWE do. So yeah, the decision to keep on going, it's harder to criticize the promotions for that, because their hands may well be tied. However, the measures that they have taken should absolutely be criticized, because AEW, by all accounts, they test everyone at every tapings. They do as much as they believe they can. It's not perfect. It's not great. I'm reticent to even call it good, but it's better than what WWE has done so far. New Japan continuing in Tokyo at the moment. Yesterday in Tokyo, there were 55 new cases, right? In Florida the other day, there were 5,500. So it's day and night there. They don't have wrestlers in the crowd either. They're stopping to disinfect the ring and stuff between matches. They've got tag team partners hanging out on the outside of the ring. Again, there's no good way to do this, but they're probably making a better job than anyone else. Situation sucks. Kind of fed up of talking about it, to be honest, but you know, when stuff like this comes up every week, gotta break it down. Gotta keep the news cycle on it. So
the TLDR version of this is, it's a mess, and it's unfortunately only going to get worse.
Yeah, exactly. Wash your hands, wear your masks, stay indoors, don't be a dick. That's the the best advice I can give you. One person who has elected to stay at home recently is Kevin Owens. Report from Fightful and Dave Meltzer last week stating that KO decided the last Wednesday's tapings, he was like, nah, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go home, whatever else. The reason wasn't given. There was no indication as to when he'd return or anything, but given that a positive test led to WWE cancelling their tapings on the Tuesday and redoing them on the Wednesday, you could join the dots. Well, you don't have to join the dots anymore. Kevin Owens has spoken out about this on The Bump. He said the following: due to the circumstances that happened over the last week there with the positive test that happened in the company, I thought it was just wiser for me to stay with my family on that day. He also said there was no pushback from company officials and said that the promotion was respectful of his decision. So, you know, Kevin Owens putting his family first, doing the Roman Reigns, you know, saying, I'm not going to bring this thing home to my wife and my children and all this stuff. Complete and utter respect for that man. Fair play to him. Sounds like it'll be a while before we see him again, folks.
Yeah, you're not going to hear one bad word against Kevin Owens from any of us here at WhatCulture. I think he's completely justified, as is, even more so now, Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns. I mean, for goodness sake, Roman Reigns is immunocompromised. He's far more under threat from an illness like this, and look at the way it's just spread across the WWE with these 24 cases. It must be terrifying for wrestlers there who kind of don't have the ability to say, no, you know what, I'm all right, because their position isn't quite as certified, let's say, as Kevin Owens. Nothing against Kevin Owens, of course, here, but yeah, Roman Reigns and Sami Zayn. Absolutely, and I hope other wrestlers kind of follow suit until WWE sorts this out. And if this spreads to AEW, expect to see more of the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, let's talk a little bit about wrestling rather than the issues surrounding it. And WWE, just blatantly counter-booking against AEW's Fyter Fest. They'd already announced, of course, in 2 weeks' time, it is now. It was going to be the NXT North American champion versus the NXT champion, winner take all. We found out who that is. Shall I say? Is that another story, Andy, or can I say?
Yeah, throw it in.
It's Keith Lee. Keith Lee versus Adam Cole. He retained last night in a really good triple threat match. That also featured Finn Balor and Johnny Gargano. But now WWE have just gone completely balls to the wall. Of course, Fyter Fest next couple of weeks. Andy's going to update you on the card for that in a second. 1st and 8th of July, Wednesday nights. Well, WWE have just gone, we've got a show. We've got the Great American Bash. There we go. Look at that. I've just thought of it. Great American Bash next couple of weeks. It's the first time that sort of thing has been brought back, the name at least, since an episode of SmackDown back in 2012. Last Great American Bash pay-per-view took place in 2008 before it became The Bash. God, what a crap name that was. Anyway, next week's Great American Bash special features the following matches. It is a number one contenders match for the NXT Women's Championship. Dakota Kai, come on Dakota, versus Tegan Nox, Candice LeRae and Mia Yim. There's also Rhea Ripley versus Aaliyah and Robert Stone in a handicap match. And if Rhea Ripley loses, she must join the Robert Stone brand, which is kind of surreally my new favourite thing on NXT. And poor Roderick Strong. He's in a strap match next week because he legged it from a match this week against Dexter Lumis. And then, of course, in 2 weeks, as I said, as part of that Great American Bash show, it is going to be winner take all, NXT champion versus North American champion Adam Cole, Keith Lee. Good stuff, but blatantly obvious counter programming.
Oh, it's total counter-programming, but that's what you do in a wrestling war, isn't it? You stack the deck against each other and see who comes out the winner. So I have no problem with that, man. It's a wrestling war. It's what you do. Let's have a look at the Fyter Fest cards that this NXT, I almost called it In Your House, that was the other week, that the Great American Bash will be going up against. I'm not going to read the whole things because there's like 11 matches here, but AEW announced the full lineups last night. Daly's Place, Jacksonville, filming everything next week apparently. Well, the Jon Moxley situation is complicated. Will he be able to travel next week? Depends on the results of his testing and stuff. We'll see how that goes. But leading night one on the 1st of July, you've got Kenny Omega and Hangman Page for the tag titles, defending against Best Friends. You've got Hikaru Shida defending the Women's Championship against Penelope Ford. And you got Cody, TNT champion, defending against Jake Hager. A couple of other matches there as well. On the 8th of July, you have your intended main event is Jon Moxley defending the AEW World title against Brian Cage. You've got Orange Cassidy versus Chris Jericho, which had the main event slot on Dynamite this week. There's some other stuff. Lance Archer versus Joey Janela. FTR and the Young Bucks teaming up against the Butcher, the Blade, and the Lucha Brothers, who are back. And finally, Nyla Rose has a singles match against an opponent to be confirmed, and AEW is teasing a big surprise for that, so you can speculate on that. Won't be anyone who was released by WWE on 15th of April because the non-competes run until like the 15th of July, so it can't be Sarah Logan, for example. Although, maybe it could be, because these are taped. No, I'm speaking rubbish, sorry, I worked myself into a shoot there. But it can't be someone like that. I don't know, free agent female wrestlers, throw them down in the comment section.
Like a great couple of weeks, stacked cards for both nights. You can kind of understand to a certain extent why NXT would counter program against this, because they would get thrashed with just a normal episode of TV if that was the case. But yeah, absolutely can't wait for the next couple of weeks, Fyter Fest, and now the Great American Bash, really exciting. And speaking of NXT and AEW, a former NXT wrestler, Cesar Bononi, I hope I've said that correctly anyway, appeared in the crowd during last night's Dynamite. You may have spotted him in the background when there was the whole stuff with Hikaru Shida and Penelope Ford before Hikaru Shida thrashed Red Velvet in about 2 seconds, basically. No indication as to whether or not Benoni has signed for AEW or is on the verge of signing. He could be used as a developmental talent, enhancement talent, or, just a sort of tryout perhaps on next week's AEW Dark. That generally has been the case as well before. It's of course on the market after the Black Wednesday releases, the original round of cuts, 15th of April, as we mentioned. Confirmation of his release didn't come until a couple of days later after that, but best of luck to him, and hopefully he's found a new home over on AEW.
Yeah, let's see if he signs there. It's interesting that he was in the crowd if he's not going to do something with them, right? Let's go to our final story here. The cult indie promotion CHIKARA has shut down, unfortunately, amidst severe abuse allegations against a number of personnel involved with that company. The founder, Mike Quackenbush, issued the following statement on Twitter last night. I've been made aware of recent allegations about myself and people in my employ. I take all allegations seriously, whether they are about me or members of my team. Addressing these with openness and transparency is of the utmost importance to me, so these matters can be given the proper time and attention. I am discontinuing CHIKARA and resigning as head trainer at the Wrestle Factory, which is a school in Philadelphia. I'll make a full statement on the matters in the near future. So, Quackenbush himself has been the subject of multiple allegations relating to all manner of just gross behaviours over the years, and particularly in light of the Speaking Out movement. They recently fired a wrestler who competes as Kobold from the promotion, as he was implicated as well. Recent times have seen promotional mainstays Kimberly, Hallowicked and Dasher Hatfield say, I'm not working for this group anymore. It's a shame for the fans. CHIKARA had a very tightly knit fan community. They were marketed as this family-friendly, like squeaky clean, ultra-inclusive promotion. They had wacky gimmicks like ants and stuff, and it was just like meant to be like a comic book lucha thing come to life. And it turns out it was a hive of just dastardly awfulness. So here we are. Promotion's gone. Been open since 2002. A shame for the fans, but it sounds like things were really terrible behind the scenes there, so there we are.
Yeah, exactly. Not really a lot I want to say about that. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below, and we'll move on to your Twitter questions at WhatCulture WWE. Of course, if you want to get in touch with us, Rip and Marks. No doubt a relative of our friend over at Kayfabe News. Go and subscribe to that if you haven't already. He says, with all the chaos in professional wrestling right now, could you see fans just saying screw it and giving up completely on pro wrestling? Hate to say it, but I'm just about there. Yes, Andy Murray is right now the worst time to be a pro wrestling fan ever.
It's hard for me to say if it's the worst time ever, like definitively, because we've had a lot of bad times, brother. But it does have that kind of the air in the fandom around the Benoit situation. I personally took like a couple of years off after that, but a lot of people were like, nah, I'm done. This darkness is not for me. It's got that kind of vibe to it, although this affects like a lot more people than that. Like directly, I mean. Obviously that incident had major ramifications, but yeah, it's got that vibe. I wouldn't blame anyone who wants to say, nah, I'm out. This is gross. This, the speaking out allegations and the virus, the thing, spreading through everything. It's a rough time. I wouldn't blame anyone who's sitting there going, hey, I'm off. But we can only hope it rebounds somewhat when things go back to normal.
Yeah, exactly. A rough time to be a fan of pro wrestling right now, but it needs change. That's all we can say, really. Second question today comes from WWE Bobo on Twitter, who says, I have a theory. I think that Seth Rollins' greater good is The Fiend. How do you feel about that, Andy Murray?
Oh, man. I mean, it would make sense from a storyline perspective, right? They could tie that all together, but kind of after their feud, man, the last thing I ever want to see is those guys interacting again. So I do think it makes sense, if you follow the logic, but I personally do not want to see that.
Anytime I hear him say the greater good, all I can think of is the village in Hot Fuzz, and they're like, the greater good. Like,
that's the one.
Wow, Seth Rollins has moved to a quaint British village, apparently. Final question today comes from Jobber C137, who says, do you think Robert Roode will come back and interfere in the match between Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre, of course, for the WWE Championship at Extreme Rules? If he does, will he help or screw over his former tag team partner?
The simple, boring answer to this question, unfortunately, is what are the travel restrictions? Because he's currently stuck in Canada as part of the ongoing Global Bastard. I don't know what those restrictions are at the moment. Perhaps someone is better informed and can let us know. But if he's allowed to travel, he may. If he's not allowed to travel, he will not. I think he would help rather than hinder Dolph as well.
And I still think that Drew McIntyre will retain the WWE Championship, even if that does happen. Let's move on to today's, and finally, a massive shout out to @Vesimer on Twitter, aka Brian Harold Jr., who pointed this out. Congratulations to Cody Rhodes. He's won another championship, Andy Murray. Did you know this? He's not only the TNT champion, but according to All Elite Wrestling's YouTube channel, last night on Dynamite, he held a TNA championship press conference. Well done. I didn't even realise that. I must have missed that. We've been slow on the uptake here, Andy.
Yeah, it turns out Cody and Moose are the same person. Who would have known? Embarrassing little typo here, isn't it? You silly sausages. To be fair, I've caught myself doing it a few times as well. You know, the TNA title, it's really tempting to just, add that little A at the end. But hey, here we are. He's not competing in Ultimate X matches and reverse battle royals and what was that fish market brawl thing with Shark Boy? He's not doing those.
Don't forget the Silent Night Bloody Night match. That was an absolute classic over in TNA, honestly. Yeah, I mean, I'm in no position to judge. I called the Natural Nightmares the Natural Disasters the other week. So yeah, but don't worry, AEW have since corrected it, probably after a barrage of YouTube comments that now no longer seem to make sense anymore. Very quickly, also want to say a very happy birthday to one of our regular contributors and big fans on our live stream, Rachel Bartolo. Happy birthday, Rachel, from all of us here at WhatCulture Wrestling. Hope you have a fantastic day. Let us know your thoughts on that and all of today's news stories in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts. Myself and the Dadley Boys reviewing the Wednesday Night War a little bit later on today. Plus, you can let us know your thoughts and Twitter questions on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE, and watch there. Follow both of us. You can follow Andy Murray at...
You can follow me at Andy H. Murray. The H stands for dog, but it begins with a H.
Yeah, I can't think of one. Follow me at Adam Wilborn. Follow us all at WhatCultureWWE. But for now, my thanks to Andy Murray. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.